Them closed down nearly 3% in Paris. The airline says it would be extremely penalised by the French government's plan, proposing an Ecotax on all flights out of France. It would raise nearly $250 million from 2020. It could be a game changer, according to the air transport group. Flight worldwide produced nearly 860 million tonnes of CO2 in 2017. The airlines say they're being targeted too much. I spoke to the CEO, the chief executive of IATA last month in Seoul. He said the perception of airlines when it comes to pollution is simply wrong and unfair.
We are not the greatest polluter. We represent 2% of the emission. I don't claim that it's not enough and that it will not grow, but I say it's 2%. There are other areas that are probably more worse. Secondly, we are the only one who have taken 10 years ago, very strong commitments, not only to cap the emission, but to reduce them. And thirdly, it's not only commitments in the air with nothing behind. We have implemented successfully the programs at all levels, with every industry members, but also with 193 governments.
The industry is sharply against this. Melissa Bell in Paris is with me. Look, I don't know anybody in the airline industry or aviation that would go along with what the French government is planning. Why are they doing it?
And so far, yet, Richard, environmental groups have been fairly cautiously optimistic about what's being announced because they are concerned about the European Union's figures, for instance, that if nothing is done, CO2 emissions caused by the aviation industry are to rise 300% between now and 2050. And you have this growing movement of people who are saying, look, we're not going to take planes anymore, of the young coming out to talk about the climate crisis. And I think one of the things that Emmanuel Macron had made clear from the very start was that the Paris Climate Accord deal would be at the very heart of what he was trying to achieve nationally. That failed spectacularly when he tried to do it last autumn. This time, though, with the Ecotax on aviation, he believes, the French government believes, that is really paving the way for a more ecologically responsible aviation industry, Richard.
Melissa, but the problem with eco-taxes in aviation, as we've seen from APD in the UK, and we saw in the Netherlands and we've seen elsewhere, is that the money often doesn't go to environmental causes. And once these taxes are on, it's very difficult to get them off.
That's right, Richard, and that's one of the things that the French government has wanted to address head-on when it announced these measures today, saying that the 180 million euros that are to be raised from next year from this tax, and again, it's a different tax according to whether you're flying in economy and flying within Europe, or whether you're flying business out of Europe, it goes up to 18 euros. Then what the French government said in outlining these measures today was, look, this money, this 180 million euros that's going to be raised from it, will go directly to helping more eco-friendly forms of transport, and specifically, Richard, improving France's rail infrastructure. Of course, the airlines are against, and no surprise, Air France, KLM, first amongst them. What Air France say is that, look, we are going to be penalised in terms of competitiveness. 50% of our flights leave from France. This is going to hit us harder than others. And of course, at a time, Richard, when bear in mind that they've lost hundreds of millions of euros over the course of the last few years because of industrial action. This is a company that spectacularly did not need this. And yet, the French government ploughing on with this. It is to come into effect next year, the French government says, in order to help improve that carbon footprint of airlines. And again, this is one of other impositions that are being made on the aviation industry. From 2021, all of the airlines are going to have to count how much CO2 emissions they're